going with that gun in your hand? Hey, Joe, I said, where you going with that gun in your hand? I'm going out and shoot my old lady. You know, I'm about to mess around with another man. I'm going out and shoot my old lady. You know, I'm about to mess around with another man. And that ain't too good. Hey, Joe, I said, I heard you shot your lady down, you shot her down. Hey, Joe, I said, I heard you shot your lady down, you shot her down in the ground. Yes, sir, I did, I shot her. You know I'm gonna mess around town. Yes, I did a shot her. You know I'm gonna mess around town. Now give it a gun, I shot her. Where you gonna run to now? Where you gonna go? Hey, Joe said, where you gonna run to now? Where you gonna go? Hey, stop this! I'm going way down south. Way down, Mexico way.
Welcome back to the Professor Penn podcast. Tuesday night, December 10th, 2024, 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. David Penn, your host, glad to be back with you. Good evening to you. I hope you're well. I hope you're enjoying the holidays as best you can. There's so much to go over. I always say this, jokingly, and sometimes I watch InfoWars with Alex Jones, and it's 4 hours a day. He's on 4 hours a day. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, that's a lot of content. I think I could broadcast 24 hours today just to go over the things that have happened since I was with you last week. Good morning, Tanner.
Good morning, David.
How you doing?
I'm doing better today.
Thank you. Everybody in the audience, well, not everybody, another cognitive distortion. Try to root out those cognitive distortions. But many of us know Tanner had the loss of a very significant person in his life, his grandfather. He has an intact family, which many of us do not, which means that familial line from grandfather to father to son is a big deal in Tanner's life. And he's still dealing with this. And we here at Free People Radio are dealing with it because actually the funeral is going to be, it's the funeral, right, on Thursday?
Funeral's on Friday, but the visitation's on Thursday.
Right. So Tanner will not be in the studio to produce for me on Thursday. We're not quite sure what we're going to be doing around here. For those of you who are following me on X, the very well-known Walter Hudson from the Minnesota Republican Party, a politician and a legislator, was going to appear with Royce and I on Hebrews tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning, on the eve of the very important State Central Committee meeting where the Republican Party of Minnesota will chart a new course or not. And I was very excited to have Walter in. And Walter, I want to have a good relationship with you. Walter called and canceled and said, let's do it after State Central Committee as an after-action report. Frankly, Walter, I'm not happy to hear that because the action is not after. The action is before. So, the non-appearance, I hope it's for the reasons that you gave me, and I'm looking forward to meeting you. But what we want to do is talk about the issues that are impacting us here in Minnesota before State Central. It would have been a very well watched, very pertinent, very timely dialogue, which we're just not going to have. So I'm going to have some of that without Walter today because State Central Committee is a big deal. And believe it or not, it relates to all the other world events that we're going to talk about. We started out. Do you know Jimi Hendrix, young man?
Yeah, my dad listened to Jimi Hendrix a
Your
lot.
dad is into a lot of the same music I am. I
Yeah.
can see that.
Yep.
Great. Hey, Joe. What you doing with that gun in your hand? I caught my old lady messing around with another man. I'm going to shoot her down. This kind of sentiment is now prohibited. We don't talk like this anymore, do we?
No.
There's no shooting down our old ladies for messing around with other men. But the feeling is still there. Every once in a while, much to my dismay and chagrin, some man driven over the edge by his own inability. I said driven over the edge by his own inability to deal with the events in his life, freaks out and kills his soon-to-be ex-wife or his ex-wife, sometimes the kids, sometimes the judge. This goes back to this family court thing. But I'm not blaming the family court or the woman. We're not living in a time where men are going to exact revenge on women who don't love them. I mean, that's just not part and parcel of how we're going about our business here in 2024. But the feelings still exist. And the younger you are as a man, the more you could be prone. This can't happen to me because at my age, it's not that I couldn't lose my relationship or that I might not be forced to suffer the indignity of being alone, but I'm not going to go kill anybody over it. But I'm also older, and I know what that feels like when you're young. I remember the first time I was betrayed in a relationship. I was 19 years old, and I was stunned that this happened. Stunned. And of course, I only have myself to blame because I was dating a 30-year-old woman. So I was out of my mind by myself.
What are you doing, David?
What was I doing? I was being Professor Penn at a young age,
She was
trying to
spawn
search for
trapping
truth.
you.
It was goofy. Hey, it was terrible. I mean, but my
I'm sorry
point.
to laugh at it.
Well, it was stupid, right? It was stupid. But I mean, when I'm stupid, I have to say, hey, I was stupid. But I was betrayed, and I had all the feelings of rage. These are things we have to work through. I think it's important that young men involved, when I mean young, I mean 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, I think it's important that they play football. I think it's important that they wrestle. I think it's important that they learn how to fight, not for any other reason, but to discover in themselves the dark side of their humanity. A man who has not discovered the dark side of his humanity could discover it in a flash and go into what I would call the gap where there's no consciousness. And when they wake up on the other side, someone could be badly hurt or dead. So when that happens to you and you're 8, you probably aren't going to kill anybody. When it happens to you when you're 28, well, our prisons are filled with young men who gap out and kill. And, this is, again, an educational thing. We could, as a society, as a culture, as a well being culture, as a Republican culture, we could help men understand themselves far better than we do. We don't, the cultural knowledge is there, the scientific knowledge exists, but what does our government do? Our government weaponizes this dark side of humanity, for example, in programs like MK Ultra, where they exploit the gap, the lack of consciousness, and turn it into a weapon. We got an entire very popular movie series called The Bourne. Was The Bourne Identity or Jason Bourne? You know those Bourne movies with
You can't ask me about movies. I don't watch any movies.
Matt
I'm
Damon. I'm
sorry.
sorry, Matt Damon played this dude named Jason Bourne. I think there's 3 Bourne movies, and I mean, I love the movies because they're martial. Um, and they brought out what I loved about it was exposing something that the government does with great skill, which to take young men, strip them of their personalities, and rebuild them in the image that the government wants, which is stone killers. And I've had the misfortune or the fortune of spending a lot of my life energy and time around such people. And I wouldn't give that up, but it gave me a view into how we're exploited as inventory. And then when our government lies, um, when everything is a lie, lies, the lies are so profound that the line goes right down to the individual citizens. We lie to each other. Um, Today, I signed a pardon for my son, Hunter. From the day I took office, I said I would not interfere with the Justice Department's decision making, and I kept my word even as I have watched my son being selectively and unfairly prosecuted. Without aggravating factors like use in a crime, multiple purchases, or buying a weapon as a straw purchaser, people are almost never brought to trial on felony charges solely for how they filled out a gun form. Those who were late paying their taxes because of serious addictions but paid them back subsequently with interest and penalties are typically given non criminal resolutions. It is clear that Hunter was treated differently. The charges in his case came about only after several of my political opponents in Congress instigated them to attack me and oppose my election. Then a carefully negotiated plea deal, agreed to by the Justice Department, unraveled in the courtroom, with a number of my political opponents in Congress taking credit for bringing political pressure on the process. Had the plea deal held, it would have been fair and a reasonable resolution of Hunter's cases. No reasonable person who looks at the facts of Hunter's cases can reach any other conclusion than Hunter was singled out only because he is my son. And that is wrong. There has been an effort to break Hunter, who has been 5.5 years sober, can't even say it, even in the face of unrelenting attacks and selective prosecution. In trying to break Hunter, they've tried to break me. And there's no reason to believe it will stop here. Enough is enough. For my entire career, I've followed a simple principle: just tell the American people the truth. They'll be fair minded. Here's the truth: I believe in the justice system, but I have wrestled with this. I also believe raw politics has infected this process and it has led to a miscarriage of justice. And once I made this decision this weekend, there was no sense in delaying it any further. I hope Americans will understand why a father and a president would come to this decision. Yeah, I understand. President Biden had the power to pardon his son back to 2014. It didn't have very much to do with these gun charges. And this kind of line right in our face, right out in our face, it's just like, hey, Joe, what you doing with that gun? I'm going to shoot my old lady down. I mean, Joe's not hiding. Joe Biden's not hiding. And hey, Joe's not hiding. So when we take this anti Republican, anti religious, anti spiritual sentiment of power is power is the hunter. It's kind of a nice idiom, right? We have abrogated Christianity, the Judeo Christian roots of our culture, which is about love your neighbor as you yourself wish to be loved. And personal redemption comes with honesty and transparency, what they call in the Catholic Church confession. What they call at the Professor Penn podcast is, forgive me, my Father, for I have sinned. Pardon me, my King, for I have willfully transgressed. For you pardon and forgive. Blessed are you, God and King of all worlds, who is gracious and ever willing to forgive. But that forgiveness does not come sometimes, and I can just testify in my own life, it doesn't come without hardship. Because just to forgive, just to say, yeah, you're I pardon you, doesn't bring about the kind of spiritual evolution inside, inside, in here. It doesn't bring about the kind of spiritual evolution that will prevent a bad choice in the future. You know, I've gone through my entire life making a lot of good choices, but making some awful choices. And we all do that. There's nothing strange about that. But as we get older and we get wiser, that's, the wise part, we want to make good choices and let those good choices be an example, or how we live our life be an example to the younger generation, so that we can transmit the cultural energy of love your neighbor as I wish to be loved myself. Because if we don't juxtapose something on top of this Darwinian struggle where there's no rules, which that's the title of tonight's episode, number 163, there's no rules. No rules. There's no rule of law here. There's no rule of law. There's no rule of law when, hey, Joe, I'm going to shoot my old lady down. There's no law there either. But there are some spiritual truths in it. There's no human law. There's no spiritual law, but there are spiritual truths to be found. For example, and this will sound a little strange, but I've thought this for many, many years. When these people lose it, men or women sometimes, because women do it too, that's something we don't talk about. There's many abused men. We just don't talk about it because, hey, men are stronger and they can hurt more, but hey, we're all equal now. So if we're really all equal, if we're all equal under the law and women have liberation, which they do, and we're seeking to form a more perfect union, which we are, the abuse that men suffer from women needs to be addressed equally with the abuse that men place upon women. And there's a thing in traditional culture that you can kill a person with your words, and that happens. You can kill a person with how you cook for them, and it happens. So there's a lot of hatred and revenge going on beneath the surface that just goes on by as if it doesn't matter. And it does matter if we make our society about well-being. I have no bone to pick with either side. I want both sides to embrace life. That's it. And we're not there right now. In fact, we're more polarized than we've ever been. And um, when these men, because of shortcomings within themselves, cannot deal with the loss of a loved one and kill, hey, Joe, uh, we view that as an isolated instance of depravity. I don't view it as an isolated instance of depravity. I think about all the times I have been angry at my partner, and all the times I've been with men. Men don't generally, the men I hang around with don't generally talk about their relationships, but I can see the struggle in their faces. I can see the hurt in their eyes. We just don't talk about it. There's an old idiom, men live lives of quiet desperation. And there's a lot of truth to that. Now, not Tanner, he's too young to know this, and I hope he's insulated from it. May his wife always love him and adore him, because we all want to be adored. That's what gives us, some hope if we don't have faith. But all these billions of people that are trapped in without love and feeling and thinking murderous and awful things about each other, that energy is very real. And just because we don't see it, and just because we don't acknowledge it, that unseen world, does not mean it's not powerful. And it becomes weaponized. It becomes energy that goes to a place. And that place could be a young man who gaps out. And in that gap, all that energy of hatred and division and blame becomes part of that life. And that life then takes a life. And I know that sounds rather esoteric, but there is an unseen world, and thoughts are things. That's why in Christianity, Christ cautioned that even in your mind, what you think has to be addressed. It's not just what you say and what you do, but even your mind has to be focused on love. Love your neighbor as you love yourself, and love the Lord your God with all your strength and all your soul and all your strength, might, everything. These are ways to insulate yourself from the mistakes that are made in that unseen world. And that's why you see these traditional cultures that they pray 3 times a day, they pray 5 times a day. They're constantly praying. It's not that you have to say the same thing over and over because God needs to hear it. It keeps your mind focused on something that's good for you, because idle time is the devil's plaything. And isn't that what the convenience of modern life has brought us, is a lot of idle time? And is it any surprise that our culture is descending into depravity behind the convenience and the free time that technology allows for me? I don't have to go out and hunt this morning to eat. I just open up the refrigerator. You know, I got my coffee cup here. I didn't grow these beans. Juan Valdez grew them. So these issues are left to us as being very disparate, very unrelated. But as we grow as people, as we understand the interconnectedness of all things, like this World Wide Web idea, WWW, that is a traditional cultural idea that goes back into antiquity about the connectedness of all things. That humans had the capacity before we became weakened by technology to connect to all things by ourselves. Now, we called these people shamans, holy men. They could predict the future, they could see the past. Science tells us that such things are not real. Science tells us a lot of things that benefit the scientist and the technocrat, that makes their expertise the highest and the best and the good. But um, there are many other ways of being. And I am not anti-science. I'm pro those other ways of being. I don't think they need to be exterminated by a scientific method as it consolidates its control in a technocracy. And going back to a very recent previous episode, the number one issue that we face is not the endless war, it's not the open border, it's not the debt. Those are diversions. The number one issue is the technocracy and the use of biotechnology and artificial intelligence to create a new kind of human life. That is the danger I see. That's what I face, and that's what I'm going to be talking about. It may not be in vogue to talk about it. Uh, Google just announced that it has a new computing technology which it calls Willow, which in 5 minutes can do calculations that the most important supercomputers in the world today would take longer than the known existence of the universe to reach the answer. I'm going to say this again because this is rather mind boggling. Google announced this week that it has a new technology called Willow that can make a calculation in 5 minutes. That if you used the traditional supercomputers to get that answer would take longer than the length of time that the known universe has existed. It's called quantum computing. What does that mean? What does that mean? And I think the comment that Royce made on Hebrews not long ago is, what holy man is programming this technology? I mean, we're psychopathic as a species. We kill without remorse. We perpetrate genocides in the pursuit of our political aims. People are starving to death all over the world. Uh, and humanity now has the arrogance out of its Tower of Babel to program this kind of powerful intelligence, artificial intelligence. Hey, we're getting into an area that, is very, very dangerous, and it has been portended as being dangerous going back to the first Terminator movies. I mean, this thing, we've been getting predictively programmed for this moment my entire life. And what are we doing? We're watching football on Sunday. When I say we, me too. The Vikings were awesome this past Sunday. Hey, the Vikings are kicking it. Yeah, we get diverted by bread and circuses and our asses on the line. And when our president or whoever wrote this for him can obfuscate at this level that it's about a gun charge when he pardoned Hunter back to 2014, trying to protect his family from investigation for what happened in Ukraine and Burisma, going back to Hunter's involvement there. Well, come on. I mean, please, now. I say all the time, I just said this to Walter Hudson. I don't need to agree with people. Please, let's just be honest with each other and disagree with some dignity. We don't need to be lying to each other, but the whole thing is a lie. I mean, the whole thing is a lie to the extent that since I saw you last, the Syrian army collapsed, right? It collapsed. The Syrian army collapsed. Now, I want to talk about this in very geopolitical terms. Before we get to it, Tanner, under Russia grinds down Ukraine. I'm sorry I didn't number these clips. Could you just, this is a clip that is going to show you the progress of the Russian army, the Russian Federation army in Ukraine this year. This is quite striking. This, if it's true, which again, I'm not there. I'm relying on a news source, could be BS. You're watching the Ukrainian front lines collapse. Now you can see from the language, if you're watching this, this is in Russian. This is the Russian perspective on this. And you're watching Ukraine collapse. We know it's collapsing from the desperation in our own capital and in the capitals of other NATO members, talking about putting NATO troops into the Ukraine, arming the Ukrainians with nuclear weapons, allowing the Ukrainians to attack inside Russia with ATACMS missiles, which interestingly, we haven't seen that in the last few days because Putin said, hey, keep it up, F around and find out. And he had, delivered that new multiple independent reentry vehicle technology, bombing Dnipro with it. And I think it took a few days for that to sink in around NATO, but they seem to have changed their strategy because the only place where NATO is losing, and when I say NATO, that includes we the people, we're the backbone of NATO. So when President Trump says he's thinking about withdrawing from NATO, what he's thinking about doing, and I agree with this, my name is Paul, and it's between y'all. I don't have any, and I'm from the Ukraine. I have no interest in Ukraine. I'm interested in Senate District 45 here in Minnesota, where I live, my neighborhood. I don't have global ambitions. There's a lot of people on X, and there's a lot of people I know, little people just like me, little people in the Republican Party of Minnesota, often ex-military. They are so caught up in this military adventurism of the United States government. They see the U.S. military and the deployment of the U.S. military and the U.S. military budgets as being essential to who we are as Americans. I just don't see that. And we're having this battle throughout the world. It's throughout the world in Syria. And I'm going to just link all these things together. We're going to talk about Syria, Georgia, Romania, France, Germany. We're going to talk about Minnesota. We're going to talk about the same battle with its own unique local characteristics. It's all the same, but a little different locally. It's a battle between globalism and nationalism, between globalism and the people that want to be living in their neighborhoods. People are waking up to the dangers of globalism. It's because of broadcasts like the Professor Penn podcast, or I'm now on for example, the John Fredericks Radio Network doing a radio show. John Fredericks is great. I mean, there's all these great podcasts. You're watching them. You know who I'm talking about. Some of these people have 100 million views per episode. This is changing the nature of how people think about things. Mainstream media controlled my mind when I was young because I had I was born in the 50s, CBS, ABC, NBC, and we trusted these people. That's how gum-dipped we were. We believed in the magic bullet theory, bullets zigzagging around, and, we believed that. I mean, because, I was 6, 7, 8 years old. I'd never fired a weapon. I didn't know anything about ballistics. I'm sure the people that knew something about ballistics, hey, Tanner, you know a lot about weapons. Do bullets zigzag around like they got a brain of their own?
Absolutely not.
Right. So somebody came to you and said, there's a magic bullet theory. This bullet shot by Oswald hit Conley, hit the president, bounced off the car, went up and around, did an Immelman. I mean, you would have said, come on, that's not the way things work, right?
I thought the magic bullet theory was that they found a bullet that wasn't affected by anything.
That's a different part of the case. That was another part of it.
Okay.
We have to go into the Kennedy histories.
I would love to go into that.
Well, we'll put it on the list for things to do.
I'm writing it down.
But Tanner is my producer, and he's keeping me on track here. There was a bullet that they couldn't explain its trajectory, so they called it the magic bullet. What is a magic bullet? A bullet does not have a brain. There's nothing magic about a bullet. They sold us that, and we believed it. We believed it. Now, I believed it until I was in my late 20s. And I was in Dallas, and I said, I'm going to Dealey Plaza. I want to check this thing out. I'd already been hanging around with some pretty spooky dudes for a very long time, since I was 19 years old. And I wasn't there on business. I was just there for pleasure. I was taking a trip, and I said, I'm going to go check this out. And I went to Dealey Plaza, knowing what I knew, and I said, wow, this is a scam. If you were going to kill somebody professionally who was a president, this is exactly the kind of spot you would go to do it. And I urge any of you, if you're in Dallas, go to Dealey Plaza. It's spooky. You can see everything very clearly when you watch it on the Zapruder film, or you're watching it on a movie like JFK with Oliver Stone. It doesn't quite capture the sight lines and the closeness of this spot. But the reason I knew it was spooky is because they shot Kennedy on an entrance ramp to the Interstate 35 highway. And, we see this all the time when we're driving. When you go onto a on-ramp or an off-ramp, things slow down. You can't speed up there. Things get blocked. And that's exactly what happened. They shot him on an entrance ramp where things had to slow down to get on that highway. And the sight line, the distance between the Texas Book Depository and the grassy knoll. And now there's even a theory going around that the Secret Service turned around and shot Kennedy in the head. This thing is so fraught with mystery. But we believe that's not the point. The point is we believed what a bunch of Masons told us, the Warren Commission. And the one guy in that commission who was not a Mason, who was not in the Masons, the one guy, Hale Boggs, who objected to the findings of the Warren Commission, died mysteriously in a plane crash. Hey, I don't know what to say about it other than we were so gum-dipped, we didn't even investigate. I'm not trying to provide an answer. I'm saying I don't know the answer, and the facts are so complicated and so contradictory. Why did we, my generation, the boomers, accept this as truth without any question? And that's because we had three television stations, ABC, NBC, CBS, and we trusted these people. We're like waking up from a dream here. So all this podcasting, it's deconstructing the narrative of the globalists. And I'm playing on there something that came from some Russian source. I'm not a Russian sympathizer. I'm just saying, well, that's a pretty good graphic, and it seems to dovetail with what I'm seeing from my own government, which is obviously desperate about this Ukraine thing. President Biden tried to run through a $23 billion last minute arms appropriation for the Ukrainians, and President Trump got to Speaker Johnson and they shut it down. President Trump is threatening Zelensky, if he doesn't get to the negotiating table, we're cutting off the money. Hey, that's going to bring a fast settlement. And I've been saying that for a year. But what's so interesting is this: wherever you look, in Syria, in Georgia, in Romania, in France, in Germany, in the United States of America, in State Central Committee here in Minnesota, it's the same fight. It's a group of people that are in power, that have been established by the globalist sentiment, the United Nations, one world governments, climate change. Why do we need one world governments? To manage man-made climate change, to redress the ills of colonialism, to create equity. Not equity is in value. Equity is we're all the same, which is communism. Global communism has been thought to be by those globalists as the only sustainable. They call it sustainable, which sustainability used to be recycling your banana peels. Now sustainability is we're all the same. That's where they're taking us, and that's where they take our young people. Makes perfect sense to them because they never created anything. They don't have anything. So being all the same. Do you remember when you were in kindergarten? You remember being in kindergarten, right?
Yeah.
Weren't all you and all your mates all about the same?
And what do you mean?
You're all the same. You're all dumb, kindergartners. You're
Yeah.
all happy. You're all beautiful.
Right.
Everybody's got smiling faces. Men, women, there's no sex. Everybody's the same. Nobody's gotten any more and nobody's gotten any less. You're all just in kindergarten, right?
Yeah.
Dumb, easy to control, right?
Yeah.
That's your government's view of how we should be. That's their view. Easy to control. When the teacher said, everybody stand up now, we're going to the cafeteria, everybody stood up and walked single file to the cafeteria. Do you remember? Right. Nobody jumped up and said, jihad, and blew the room up. The kindergartners, right?
Yeah.
Easy to control. Easy to control kindergartners. And the kindergartners don't even care because they're not thinking about geopolitical issues or Billy has more than me. Everybody's the same. I remember it's a beautiful time, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful. It's beautiful. There's no conflicts. By about fourth, fifth grade, the conflicts are starting, right?
Yeah, that's
Right?
what I was just thinking about. I was like, it wasn't too long after that.
Well, we grow up.
Yeah.
We start to become aware of what's going down.
Yeah, you start noticing the kids that get to do hockey camps and you don't.
Oh, a little memory there for Mr. Tanner.
No,
yes.
I never experienced. I was never in hockey, but that's
right.
just what
that's
I
my
noticed.
point. You didn't get to go to hockey camp. But in Syria, boy, this was a great one. And I know most of you know this because you're listening to other media, but this really bears consideration. I'm going to give you a personal story because I talk about being involved with some pretty spooky dudes, and I was. In about, must have been 1997, which is 4 years before 9/11, right? My senior came to me and he said, Mr. Penn, we're going to have a meeting because I was like the executive officer of this crew. Get the boys together. Yes, sir. And he strides in. I mean, this guy was powerful. He strides in and he goes, this is the first words out of his mouth. We're going to have a problem with the Muslims. And what? We all looked around. There was no problem here in Minnesota with the Muslims in 1997. It was not in anybody's mind. In fact, to be frank, nobody know the difference between a Shia and a Sunni Muslim. It was not in anybody's mind. It was not. I mean, I was watching. Oh, look, Yasser Arafat is negotiating with Ehud Barak to bring peace to the Middle East. I mean, we thought everything was going to be good. We're going to have problems with the Muslims. Okay, yes, sir. What we are going to do is train local police whose orientation is protect and serve. We're going to take key members of those police units and we're going to train them to deal with terrorist events. You have to, this is 97 now. You got to get your mind around this. This was far from anybody's thinking. And I thought to myself, okay, yes, sir. Didn't talk back. The word had come down that there was going to be problems, right? Now, this goes back to stuff we've talked about here on the podcast, that under the Carter administration, because the Russians are really what this is all about, it was never about Al-Qaeda or, Iran. This has always been a big power struggle between the globalists, the Anglo-Saxon cartel, which is now called the Western Alliance, United States, the NATO members, and Israel, against the Eastern Alliance, Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, and Syria. It has always been this battle. And it's really about the key actors, which is the Russians and the NATO alliance. And this goes back 1805, 1812, 1853, 1917, 1942, the Cold War, now the Ukraine War. This is all the wars in recent memory that the West, the Western Alliance, has waged against the Eastern Alliance. I'm going to say this again. I think we need to get this historically clear. The British attacked the Russians in 1805. They attacked them again in 1853. In the middle there, Napoleon attacked Russia in 1812. France is part of NATO. I mean, this is reality. We got to get our historical facts right. 1917, Russia was occupied right after the Bolshevik Revolution, including by American soldiers. Then in 1942, the Germans attacked. Oh, Germany's part of NATO. England's part of NATO. France is part of NATO. Germany's part of NATO. Oh, see, now the thing starts to get clear. When you start clearing off the dust, like cleaning up an old piece of woodwork, you got to clean it up a little bit so you can see the beautiful contours and bold relief. You got to get the crust off of it. And when you get the crust off, you can see that the British have been orchestrating, and the French and the Germans and the Americans, a war on the Russians since at least 1805. And it goes back before that. The globalists have been vying for control of Eurasia since 1805. Actually, far earlier than that. I'm just trying to give it some kind of scope. 220 years is enough scope. But in Syria, this really makes clear what I was not capable of understanding in 1997, which was the very people that were our enemies, Al-Qaeda, actually started in the Carter administration. The CIA was arming what they called the Mujahideen in Afghanistan to fight the Russians who had taken over Afghanistan and created a puppet regime there, led by a guy named Najibullah. And so our CIA started funding, and these people had guns, muskets. They were fighting the Russians with muskets. I mean, muskets, one-shot weapons. Come on, the Russians were in there with, very modern weaponry. And they were getting their ass handed to them. And the CIA intervened and they started giving the Mujahideen very advanced military technology, just as we're doing in the Ukraine, including Stinger missiles, which allowed the Mujahideen, who are Afghani traditional culture people who had also defeated the British twice not that long ago. These people are tough. They're tough. Why are they tough? They're self-governing. These people live out in nature. Okay, they're tough. I was talking to my friend Rob. He shot a deer and he didn't kill it, which blew his mind because that doesn't happen for him. He's another one of my kind of spooky friends. And that bullet passed through that deer, and we started talking about how tough, animals are, because that bullet passing through me or you, we would have got sepsis and died, almost for sure. But the deer escape, that deer lives outside. Those deer are tough. Tanner's going to agree with me about that,
Yeah,
right?
the buck I just shot this year, I killed it with one shot, but when I was cutting it open and skinning it, its right arm, it started pus was coming out, and I was like, "What in the world?" And I found old bullet wounds, and this thing I assume, was attempted to be poached with a smaller caliber. There was 2 bullet wounds in there, completely healed, besides like a bunch of pus and everything. But when I saw that animal come on the field, it was walking just fine. Somehow survived 2 bullet shots.
And no doctors, no
No doctors.
hospitals, no
Nope.
surgeries.
Well, yeah, out there, they live on the law of, if you show weakness, you're dead. So a deer can withstand so much and show, like, what they show is like almost minimal. You don't even notice that the deer is hurt, but you can get into an animal. Many, many times we've cut open animals and found bullet wounds in it.
Interesting. So these Mujahideen were tough, and you arm them with the most modern weaponry, and they were really tough. They were tough enough to defeat the Russians, and that was the beginning of the coming apart of the Soviet Union. But it wasn't the end of Russia. It reconstituted, and here we are today. But that Mujahideen concept, they were on your payroll. You paid for that. I paid for that. We were being told simultaneously. I was there. I was there where I was told we're going to have trouble with the Muslims. We're going to have to train our local police in counterterrorism techniques. In 1997, somebody knew what was going on. I mean, I was yes, sir. I didn't really think about it. I just thought about what was my role in this training, and my role was to play. I played the terrorist. That was kind of cute, wasn't it? But anyhow, uh, I thought to myself, is this kind of racist? I mean, come on. Why am I playing Can I please play the good guy? No, I got to play the bad guy, which did have benefits because it was full go. So it was kind of fun to go to town on some of these people. But my point is, we made these people. They work for us. And then the Mujahideen morphed into Al-Qaeda, which was clearly run by a very charismatic leader, Osama bin Laden, who was an ideological purist, which is not the normal state of humanity. Most people, and that's why they said he had all this porn on his hard drive. Because, see, again, just like trying to get rid of Pete Hegseth, oh, what a surprise. Men like to look at naked girls. Hey, what a shocker. Okay? That didn't make him not an ideological purist. That made him a man who was struggling with the same kind of sin and temptation that we all struggle with. It didn't change his ideological purity. In fact, it may have intensified it because there was Muslim people believe there's an angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other, and they're both whispering in your ear. So the devil's whispering in his ear, hey, let's take a look at this porn. And the angel was saying, hey, you're a sinner. You better perform. So he performed quite admirably. And I thought, and it was represented that Osama bin Laden represented and was the leader, and his ideology was Al Qaeda. And I don't think that's true. I think he was an outlier. And I think that's why such a great effort was made to kill him, because he was pulling Al Qaeda away from the people that armed them, financed them, and directed them. And who would that be? Well, we can see it in Syria. We can see it in Syria. because in Syria, the people that took over that country are Al-Qaeda affiliates rebranded as HTS. They were known not very long ago as al-Nusra. They were the Al-Qaeda affiliate in Syria. So, who backed these people? The Turks, which are a NATO member, ally of the United States, and the Israelis backed them. And Jake Sullivan, our national security advisor, was so bold as to say, boy, I gotta get this right. Maybe I won't be able to find it. Let me just see. Uh, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said this past Sunday that the United States will not, quote unquote, cry over the pressure the Syrian government and its allies are facing from an offensive led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, which they call here an offshoot of Al-Qaeda. Sullivan acknowledged that HTS was, quote, a terrorist organization designated by the United States, and said the United States has, quote, real concern about the designs and objectives of that organization. However, we fund it, we arm it, and we direct it. You know, and what really happened here now? Well, the globalists, a key Russian ally was Syria. Syria was the conduit for Iranian arms and Russian arms to travel from Iran down into Lebanon to arm Hezbollah, which is attacking the Israelis, which is a fundamental cornerstone of the globalist strategy, the linchpin of globalism, the formation of the State of Israel. And the Syrians, a Russian ally since 1946, with a Russian naval base, with two giant Russian airfields. The Syrian government is now no more. Assad is allegedly in Moscow. We don't know. We don't know. He could be in New York City. We don't know where he is. We know where we're told that he is. But see, I'm reaching the point where if I can't see it and understand it for myself, I'm very, very suspicious of any media information. I'm good. Almost every time I'm going to present something, I'm going to say, this is information. It's not necessarily knowledge, and we can't necessarily use it to create wisdom. But what I see in bold relief is that an Al-Qaeda group rebranded for you and me, armed by the Turks, and they're going to say, no, well, the Turks had their own Islamic groups. Yes, they did, but they fought together. And who knows? Okay. I've been at that border and I've been to the Syria. I've been in that part of Turkey. And I've been in Turkey when hundreds of helicopters are flying over to go attack in Syria. I looked at the guy that was handling me and I said, whoa, I had some name of it like Operation Peace for the Euphrates or something. They had an operation going on. I just happened to be there. And it's very disconcerting. In fact, Tanner, could you look in your email and you're going to find some pictures that I sent you today. Just, I didn't give you any notice on this. And you can put up a couple of these pictures that came from my trips to Turkey because I've been in Turkey many times. I understand Turkey for myself pretty well. Oh, there's a picture that I got there. That's President Erdogan and President Trump. Thumbs up. See, this is very interesting. Very interesting. We're going to talk about this. And here's the next picture. The next picture is me you'll see me in there. I'm in the center. And the two guys on my flanks control probably about 15% of the Turkish economy. And I was over there trying to make peace with the Turks. And the food was fantastic. The food was great. So, I mean, that's a little evidence that I'm not just BSing. This was part of my life. And the Turks have been labeled well, when I was in Turkey, I was very suspicious about what Turkey was doing. In fact, I've said this before. those two dudes said, would you like to meet President Erdogan? And I said, love to. And I had my consigliere with me who said, no, you can't do that. That'll violate the Logan Act. You could end up in jail. So we said, thanks, but no thanks. But, my point is, even when we were there, we were really concerned about, what was really going on in Turkey. What was really going on there? And it seemed as if the Turks were arming these Islamist groups to attack Syria, and that their real attack was about trying to thwart the Kurds, who are their mortal enemies, and that was certainly part of it. But it seems now today in bold relief, that the Turks, the Israelis, were actually arming a offshoot of Al-Qaeda, that group in the void in nature, a vacuum. There's no vacuums, right? The Russians are involved in this Ukraine thing. The Iranians are involved with the Israelis. And guess what? The Syrian government fell. Shocker. Okay, that civil war has gone on. We're going to talk about it soon. It's gone on since the Obama administration. It's the brainchild of, guess who? Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton is the brainchild of this whole mess. 10 million Syrians have been driven out of Syria. They're in Europe. They had to leave because the genocide there is so intense. There's been over 1 million Syrian casualties. It's been a brutal war. And now the people that have taken over are Sunni fundamentalists like the Mujahideen in Afghanistan. And we got Shia groups there. We got Christian groups there, Druze groups, Kurdish groups. I mean, these people, they are at risk. Now, I don't know how this is going to turn out. Maybe these people been hanging around with, AOC, and they all of a sudden said, hey, women are equal. We're pluralistic. We believe in immigration. We believe in open borders. We believe in one connected world governance. We believe in no more religion, like John Lennon sang in Imagine. It's possible, but most likely they're going to start killing all the people that don't think just the way they do. Because in the Middle East, as we can see, that's how problems get solved over there. It's called ethnic cleansing, also known as genocide. And they've already started rounding up Christians and killing them from the reports that I'm seeing. And the Kurds, who are another group, we're back, and we're on both sides of the football here now. We're back in these Islamicist groups. We know that. We know because the evidence is there. Because the Turkish military is backing them and arming them, and the Turkish military is getting backed by guess who? They're a NATO member. And how I know this is really the facts is I follow a guy named Alexander Dugin, who's a political philosopher. He's a Russian. People are going to say, oh, you're following Dugin, you're a Russian apologist. No, I'm trying to learn what's going on in my world. So if you're watching me and you're a security state operative, I'm not a Dugin fan. I'm not a Putin fan. I'm not a Russian apologist. My family skedaddled out of that region because both the Ukrainians and the Russians were killing my people. Or, as my grandfather said, the Russians came and raped you and robbed you, and they left you alive to do it again in a few months. The Ukrainians came and raped you and robbed you and killed you. So they actually preferred the Russians. However, it was not safe there. My family, those that could got out. Everybody that stayed were killed. Hey, so I have a cultural memory of this kind of bizarre thing. And we have the Turks, who are NATO members, who we were very suspicious of as the United States government. In fact, Lindsey Graham just last week made some comment, boy, if the Turks go after the Kurds, he's going to pursue sanctions against them. The Turks haven't been there. You saw that picture? The Turks are a group of people that have no friends. I know the Turks were involved in arming these Islamicists from the reaction of Alexander Dugin, because his reaction was, and you can see it on X if you go follow it, that Turkey's finished, that Turkey betrayed Russia, because there was a cooperation between the Turks and the Russians about how to deal with the Syria issue and other issues in the region. And as it turns, and I played a protest here on the podcast where it looked like 1 million Turks were in the street protesting the violence in Gaza. And Erdogan has been very vocal, very anti-Israel in his public protestations. But what really happened here? Turkey is a NATO member. It's a globalist state. It betrayed the Russians. It worked with the Israelis to destabilize the Syrian government, which is a Shia government. It is now a Sunni government, or at least Sunni people are in control of it. I don't know if there's a government yet. They've interrupted the flow of weapons from Iran that was coming through Syria down into Lebanon to confront Israel. This is a globalist operation to the max. It fulfills the number one aim of the globalists, which is to push back on the Russians. The Russians are winning in the Ukraine. We saw that. The globalists are losing in the Ukraine. But Syria has fallen. In Georgia, it's a small country with 3.5 million people. It has a pro-Russian government. There's a color revolution going on there. And the people who are in the street are funded by the globalists, and they're trying to depose that pro-Russian government, pressure for the Russians. In Romania, which has a border on the Ukraine, right in the region, right in the backyard there was a presidential election process, an electoral process. The first round, a pro-peace candidate won, and the Romanian Supreme Court said there was Russian election interference, and they voided that election. Right there, right now, we're seeing in France, the globalist government of the French people has been destabilized. It has fallen. They have to hold new election. Who's advancing that is the nationalists under Marine Le Pen. In Germany, Action for Deutschland, AfD, the most powerful, fastest growing, most popular party in Germany, now being branded as Nazi. What a surprise, because it's a nationalist party. And there might be Nazis in it. I'm sure there are. But I mean, really, it's a country that wants borders and wants peace with the Russians. So what is their platform now? They're Eurosceptics. They want to remove themselves from the European Union. All over the world, this globalist architecture is cracking up. It's cracking up. It's breaking down. It's breaking down. And, what is it really about, this globalist architecture? Well, here, the United States announces a new $725 million arms package for the Ukraine since I saw you last. He didn't get $23 billion, but he ran through $725 million, which last I checked, $725 million was real money. Here's U.S. OK's new arms sales for Taiwan. The United States approved new arms sales for Taiwan this past week, a day before Taiwanese President William Lai Ching-te arrived in Hawaii for a 2-day visit as part of a tour of the region. The Pentagon's Defense Security Cooperation Agency said the Biden administration approved 2 potential arms deals for Taiwan. The U.S. Navy's Indo-Pacific commander warns Ukraine aid is draining U.S. missile stocks. The top U.S. Navy admiral has warned this week that the recent move of Washington to give advanced long-range weapons to Ukraine is depleting U.S. missile stocks. Admiral Sam Papero, commander of U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, told a Brookings Institution, look up the Brookings Institution, audience earlier this week, that in the war the U.S. was shipping less valuable weaponry to Ukraine, which didn't deeply impact readiness for big global threats like China. But now that more advanced defense weapons tech is being shipped, this presents a serious problem for the United States' long-term defense needs. Quote, but now with some of the Patriots that have been employed, some of the air-to-air missiles that have been employed, it's now eating into our inventories, he said. Papero. And to say otherwise would be dishonest. In other words, we need more money. Send us more money. Send us more money. So there's this hybrid war that is going on all over the world. And it would happen in South Korea. South Korea has a globalist government, a conservative globalist government, because we know from the Republican Party, just being a Republican does not mean you're a Republican. You could be a adherent of the post-World War II Democrat liberal order and call yourself a Republican. Hey, in South Korea, they have a conservative leader there. His name is Yoon Suk-yeol. He declared martial law because there's a peace movement in the country, and that peace movement is reflected in their political camps. And he didn't want peace with China and North Korea. He is aligned with Japan and the globalists in the United States. That's his mission. And declared martial law. He declared martial law. In fact, this failed. He tried to get away with it. And the Koreans had a military dictatorship into the 80s. So when you start talking about dictatorship, hey, there's a lot of people my age that say, we're not going there again. The guy I was referring to earlier who trained me, and I spent 22 years with, he got his start in Korea. And he used to talk about Korea a lot. He was a U.S. serviceman in Korea. And he told me one time that, I was there. It was after the Korean War. He said, I was there in the late 50s. But the bodies kept floating on down the river. I remember him saying that. And there was a military dictatorship when he was there, stationed there. And I just would like you to play this 4-minute and 21 piece on the Park assassination, because when people have memories like this, when there's memories of genocide, dictatorship, oppression, they tend to fight back. In our country, our memory is washed. We have had so much peace and prosperity, the globalists have been able to maneuver us into this very precarious position. But in Korea, this guy tried to take over and have a dictatorship, and even his own party voted against it. The vote to overturn martial law per the Korean Constitution was 130-0. This guy's getting turfed out. Please play, just to let you know how other people are going down. Play this Park assassination piece, please.
40 years ago today, South Korea witnessed the first and only assassination of a president since the founding of the nation. On October 26, 1979, then President Park Chung-hee, father of former President Park Geun-hye, was shot to death at a dinner party in his private home in Kungjeong-dong near presidential office. The blood was in the hands of one of his closest aides, Kim Jae-gyu, director of the Korean Central Intelligence Agency. Even after the execution of Kim and his aides, the October 26 incident, or Kungjeong-dong assassination, the historical event remains a key incident in understanding the development of democracy in South Korean modern history. The president's unpredicted death meant the fall of Yushin regime. The authoritarian regime had been used to justify Park's dictatorship since his rise to power in 1961 through a military coup. The October 26 incident still remains open for different discourses and interpretations. Some call the assassination regicide, meaning the killing of a king or master. Some, including Kang Shin-ok, then attorney of Kim Jae-gyu, evaluate the incident as a gate to the abolition of dictatorial Yushin regime. Even the cause of murder remains unresolved. At the time of the crime, local media called the case a crime of passion from a loyalty competition for the president, citing authorities from Cheongwade. The unplanned murder theory is also supported by former U.S. Ambassador to Seoul Donald Gregg, who served as the head of Korean leg of CIA from 1973 to 1975. Gregg said in a local interview that the triggering factor was Cha Ji-chul, one of the presidential aides at the president's dinner party. Later witnesses, including testimonies of Kim's attorneys, however, insisted Kim Jae-gyu's killing was planned, citing the killer's document for the appellate court. According to the memoir by former President Chun Doo-hwan, Kim disclosed his 3-stage assassination project planned to kill Park and take over his power. Chun succeeded presidency in a military coup after Park's death. In his memoir, Chun describes in details that Kim had an argument with Cha Ji-chul, head of Presidential Security Department, in the U.S. military camp in Yongsan, Seoul, in the morning on the day of murder. According to joint investigation results by the Marshall administration, he wrote, Cha enraged Kim by not letting him fly on the first-tier helicopter. Kim refused to go aboard on the second-tier helicopter and did not attend the scheduled presidential visit to the completion ceremony of Satgyeocheon Seawall in Hongseong, South Chungcheong Province. That evening, Kim went to the president's dinner party with a gun hidden in his pocket. Chun recalls that Kim's reign lasted only 4 hours. At around 8 p.m., Kim and his aides convened an emergency meeting at the Korean military headquarters. Kim demanded the immediate declaration of martial law, yet the officials inquired him of specific development of the president's death. As the inquiry went on, Kim's aide Kim Gae-won confessed the whole scheme. Defense Minister Do Jae-hyun then had Kim arrested in charge of murdering the head of state. After 3 stands of trial, Kim and his aides were sentenced to death and hanged in May 1980. Evaluations on the president's assassination vary both among historians and the public. Not many people argue, however, about the fact that the incident took place in the time of great social unrest on a national scale. College students in Busan put up a major protest on October 16, 1979, soon joined by the large number of citizens from Busan and its neighboring Masan Changwon area. 40 years passed since the historical October 26 incident, and yet Koreans are still left to carry on its way to democracy with lessons from the past.
So in some context, I was hanging around with these Korean dudes in the 1970s when this went down. And they were tough, KCIA, tough as nails. And they were brutal. Not only tough, they were brutal. And that time I spoke a lot of Korean. I can't do it anymore. It's been a long time. But they didn't talk to you in English. Even if they knew English, it was all Korean all the time. And they were over here. I didn't understand what I was involved with. I was so young. I was just trying to be all I could be. I was trying to develop myself as a human being. And I thought, I thought there was value in hanging around with these people, and there was value in it. I really did gain a lot from it. But I didn't understand the implications of who these people were and what they were up to. And I look back on it and I go, man, was I ever close to history? Who were these dudes? And what were they doing here? And why were they involved with all these U.S. military people? Well, that was backwards. It was, what was the U.S. military doing over there? And why did they bring these dudes over here, like Operation Paperclip? I mean, these people were running away from a problem at home, and we gave them great jobs over here. So not to digress, I'm just saying I've had the weird path in my life. I told you I've been in Turkey. I hung around with these kind of Korean dudes. And what I know from this is, from Korea, what happened in Korea, the Koreans have no interest in going back to the kind of military dictatorship and hardship that people my age remember. So they just brushed it aside. We're not going to do that. Blow off, you globalist. We are concerned about the well-being of the Korean people. We want peace. We're the first to die. If this goes down, we're going to die. So we're making peace. Romania, right on the Ukrainian border. We want peace. Oh, well, let's void that election. See, but the Koreans, man, the Koreans are so tough. They actually threw these bums out. They actually are going to have a peace process there. We don't know how the Georgian thing's going to come out. We don't know. Maybe perhaps the Georgian government will prevail. We don't know, but there's an effort to destabilize that government. We don't know how the thing is going to come out in Romania. The people want peace. They're right on the front lines. In Germany, they're right on the front lines. They don't even want to be part of the EU anymore. They want out. At least, this new party, AfD, wants out. Alternative for Deutschland. Alternative. The alternative is we don't want to hang around with the globalists anymore. We don't want the globalists running our country. They're going to kill us. Seems to be the way they're headed. And here in the United States, we don't want the globalists running our country. That's why we think we elected Donald Trump. We think. We have a very important country. It's a very big country. It's, complicated is all I can say. We're going to see what the policies end up being. Does that sound like I'm worried? I am. I am very worried. The real issue of the day is biotechnology, robotics, and artificial intelligence. The rest of this is a giant diversion, and we're not even thinking about it, and we don't even know what it means. When I say we, I mean we the people. We're just happy Donald Trump won if you're on this side of the football. let's see how it turns out. Let's see what actually gets done here. And let's participate. So how do we participate? Well, here in Minnesota, I participate by being involved with the Republican Party. We have a thing here called State Central Committee. I'm a State Central Committee delegate. I wanted Walter Hudson to come on and talk about it. He had something else to do. He committed to do it, changed his mind. I don't know. Maybe he was being frank with me, couldn't he? He said yes, then he said no. Generally speaking, when people say yes and then they say no, they run it by higher ups that say, why are you doing that? Okay, Walter was going to be very brave to come on here, and I was going to give him a lot of respect for coming on. Plus, he's very articulate. He's an up-and-comer in the party. And, I have a chance to have some influence and make a friend. And as I said, I will be friends with anyone who is honest with me. I don't need you to agree with me. In fact, if you agree with me, it's going to scare me because I know I'm pretty far out there. Okay? I know I'm far out because what do I want? A complete disarming of the U.S. military-industrial complex. 5% of the Minnesota economy is military defense related. United Healthcare, this guy that just got capped in New York, it's based right here. I drive by their headquarters frequently. It's almost a $400 billion organization right here in Minnesota. So you got defense contractors and health contractors that comprise a very large part of the Minnesotan economy. Is it any surprise that the Democrat controls our politics and that the Republican that shows up in the Republican Party looks to me like a Democrat? Looks to me like a Democrat. I was reading Walter's stuff on X. Walter said, I've never met a Republican that's a globalist. That was his exact quote. I've never met a Republican in Minnesota who's a globalist. Well, I said, Walter, come on the podcast because that's an issue of perspective. You may think that you've never met a Republican Party member or elected official who's a globalist. And what I think is all I see is globalists. That's what I see. Globalists. 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 What does that mean? The world's at war. That's what it means. So as important as Romania is, as important as Georgia is, as important as Syria is, the Ukraine, Germany, France, all these giant geopolitical events that we're taking all of our focus, we have a meeting called State Central Committee coming up next Saturday, the 14th. And I'm going to go. But I'm going to tell you what happened. Because many of you might be in Minnesota. And if you're not in Minnesota, hey, this matters for everybody. I was on a board. I resigned. Senate District 45 Republicans. Why did I resign? Well, number one, I've come to the conclusion that the Republican Party, its role at the level I was playing it, is to put on caucus and convention. They're not really interested in lobbying the citizens of the districts to increase the number of Republicans. That's not what they do. That's why I have the three stooges of the Republican Party. Mr. We don't do that here. Mr. We don't need any more Republicans. And Mr. History doesn't matter. These are three very prominent Republicans. Mr. We don't do that here. That's Alex Plekish, who's actually running to be the new chair of the Republican Party in Minnesota, who was on my board and told me when I was trying to pursue politics on the board, we don't do that here. What? Well, see, that is the way they want to run it. They don't want citizens to pursue politics in the Republican Party in Minnesota. They want it to run like a military organization. Yes, sir. And that's not why the citizens are coming into the party. That's a scam. We're coming in to change the party from globalist to nationalist. And, Alex Plekish, we don't do that here. Well, okay, yes, we do, Alex. We're doing it. And then Mr. We don't need any more Republicans. That's Randy Sutter. He's the chair of the CD3, the Congressional District 3 Republicans. It's 800,000 people in his district. Lost the congressional race. Awful. to Dr. Kelly Morrison. That's his contribution. He's still involved. I mean, these people lose and they're still involved. That's very interesting. His thing was, I was putting on these things that I called master classes, which for those of you who might think it had a Masonic bent, no, it was musical in my mind because I went to many musical master classes. And I was, generating more and more interest. I had a partner in the deal, my good friend Dave. I hope you're listening, Dave, because I want to give you props. I didn't want to do it through the Republican Party. Dave said, no, do it through the party. Make your effort to make peace with the party. And I listened to him, and nobody paid attention until we got up to like 100 people coming. We were doing it regular, 120 people, 140 people. And then the Republican Party showed up and shut it down, took it over and shut it down. And that's when I go, Mr. Sutter, what are you doing? I'm trying to create more interest in the Republican Party. I'm trying to create more Republicans. And his comment was, we don't need any more Republicans. We need more work from the Republicans we have. And I was so naive, I couldn't understand what he was saying. They don't want more Republicans in the party because it's going to shift the balance of power in the party from globalists to nationalists. They knew what was going on. I was just naive. I don't judge. Well, I'm judging now, aren't I? Okay? And a lot of you listen to me. Thank you. And then there's Mr. History Doesn't Matter. That's a dude named Larry Frost. And I was talking about the Ukraine War, 1805, 1812, 1853, 1917, 1942, the Cold War, now the Ukraine War. Let's not take this thing at face value. And he didn't know who I was. I was talking to a table, and he looked at the table and he said, don't listen to him. History doesn't matter. History doesn't matter. The first thing I thought was, oh, you must be military intelligence, because that's the kind of thing military intelligence foists on the people. Watch cartoons, smoke a joint. History doesn't matter. And this is who the party is. It's globalist. Here, we have a globalist Republican Party in Minnesota. And is it any surprise? We don't have a huge manufacturing base. We're an ag export state, agriculture export state. This is an agriculture state. It depends on, to a large degree, exports of agricultural products. It has a huge military industrial complex industry, employing tens of thousands of Minnesotans. And it has the largest healthcare provider, insurance provider in the world, UHC. So is there any surprise that the hierarchy of the party, which goes back since Christ made corporal, is globalist? And is it any surprise that because we, the people, the citizens that are watching the podcast, listening to guys like Steve Bannon saying, if this is your mission, this country can be saved. Go get involved. Dan Schultz, Precinct Strategy. Check it out, precinctstrategy.com. There is a way for citizens to change the country. And of course, we're being resisted. Of course. And that's okay. I don't say you're bad because you're a globalist. We just don't agree. I want to talk to you with elevated rhetoric. I don't hate you. I've never met a Republican I don't like personally. We have different philosophical viewpoints. My goal is to convince you of my viewpoint. That's politics. But when you say we're not going to do politics here, when you're going to suppress the dialogue in the people because you don't want everybody to hear this perspective, when there's manipulation and when there's lying, it doesn't work. That is why I resigned from my board. And I had high hopes for my board. And when I was off doing the Royce White for Senate campaign for 4 months, I really didn't pay attention to the politics and the interpersonal relationships on this board. And it descended into chaos, and it had nothing to do with me. Now, there are those who have told me that it was put into chaos to limit me. I don't have any 8x10 glossies. I don't even think that's true. But the impact of it is I resigned because what I view as the corruption of that board, its inability to function with dignity, the unwillingness of the members to reconcile themselves, the fecklessness of the board chairwoman, who allowed this to happen. Their inability to focus on the task at hand, which is defeating the globalists, makes perfect sense because many of them are globalists and they don't even understand they're globalists, or they do understand it, and that's the perspective that they wish to pursue. I will not work with people that have an opinion and do nothing. I am doing something every day of my waking life and even in my sleep to try to contribute whatever I can to the maintenance and survival of this republic. This is not a military organization. I've been in organizations where you weren't allowed to have an opinion. Secret societies, no opinion. You don't have an opinion. Okay, what's the benefit? I learned a lot. I got a benefit from participating because I was trained in all kinds of skills that I use to this day for my well-being. So there was a deal. You will participate in this secret society. You'll do what we tell you to do, but we're going to give you skills and power that you can use in your life. And that was a good deal. And I did that for a long time. And I appreciate those years and those people. But in the Republican Party of Minnesota, they give nothing to the membership. Nothing. They suppress the members. The only thing you can get out of it is social status and membership in an organization, which to people like me doesn't mean very much. I'm in politics to change my state, to convince people to be Republicans. And the party is not engaging in that. What it is engaging in is a very consistent and concerted effort to suppress the nationalist movement here in Minnesota. And the rap is you can never win in Minnesota with a nationalist agenda. Can't do it. We're a communist state. We're a liberal state. It's not going to work. And I've had like Randy Sutter tell me that the platform should include gun control. He's a Republican, ex-military, gun control, for example. The current chairman of our party spoke openly against President Trump. Alex Plakush, who's running for the chair, called me personally and asked me to work against President Trump. My God, you people, this argument is settled right now. We have to unite as a party, and what the party is doing, it's running and retreading the same tired people that brought us to the same ugly spot that we're in with all this division and hatred. I'm almost speechless, which, for me is a stretch. I mean, it speaks for itself. The same people who brought us a devastating loss here in Minnesota. President Trump lost. Royce White did not have the support of the party. They worked to undermine him, consistently worked on him. I know I was on the campaign. I know what every one of you did. And there was some good ones in there too, like my friend Patty down in southern Minnesota. There were some people that stood up. My friend Brett. There are people that, whether they liked Royce or not, he was the endorsed candidate. They worked for him. There were many people that fulfilled their obligations as party members. But the most of you sucked. We need to get together with unity. All I heard for years was unity, unity, unity. They ran people like Kendall Qualls in front of me. You got to have unity. In other words, give up what you believe, support the party. Well, the party has changed. Now who's going to have the pleas for unity? I am. Could we quit fighting with each other, elect new leadership, and come together to try to implement republicanism? If you're a Democrat, liberal orator, aficionado, if you believe in a worldwide empire, an open border, and this taxation with the debt, if that's your thing, oh, no, I want to have a balanced budget. I want to have a closed border. Where do you stand on the Ukraine? Where do you stand on the wars? Where do you stand on U.S. military support of a global conflagration. You see this hat? This is where I stand. This is where many of the Republican Party officers in Minnesota and throughout this land stand for peace. We're not interested in your crazy bald head ideas of world domination, Darwinism, and slavery, drugs, and piracy. We don't want it. Just because you're at the top of the heap, I'm not. I don't like what it feels like down here. I don't like it. I want well-being for all the American citizens, and we can only achieve that by changing this country dramatically, not tinkering at the edges. And we start here in Romania, in France, in Germany, in Syria. It's all the same thing, but a little different. It's a battle of globalists versus nationalists. The globalists are seeking to assert their control and maintain their hegemony over this planet, and they are evil people. And if you're supporting them and you don't see it, I'll meet with you and explain it to you, because I recognize that many people have not taken the time to really delve into this. And if they did, and they realized this was an anti-Christian, anti-human, technocratic approach to creating slaves for exploitation, if they understood that, they might change their votes. But of course, if you really don't believe in God, you can say you do. You can walk around and say you're a Christian, doesn't mean you're a Christian. You can say you're a Jew, doesn't mean you're a Jew. You can say you're a Muslim, does not mean you're a Muslim. You can say you're an American, does not mean you're American. We have to clarify the ideological framework that underlies this fight in the hopes that the people that really haven't had, want to find the search for truth can find it, and then they will align with the American people. And that doesn't matter if they're black inner city residents or brown residents of South, Texas, or women in the suburbs. If you want to live, you got to get it together. These people are genocidally bent. Look at what is happening around this globe. And we, the people, are funding the entire operation. Our leadership is creating the political strategy. And let us hope and pray that when President Trump takes that seat on January 20th, a radical change will be unleashed in this country. Radical, not tinkering around the edges. Radical, that we can demand as the American people, that I demand as an American citizen, that everything we do is for health and well-being. There is nothing else. Everything else is a Tower of Babel. It's a lie. We lie to ourselves about who we are, and what we can create. We're dust to dust. Deal with it. Deal with it. Deal with who we are. Having said that, I don't know what the schedule is going to be the rest of the week because of Tanner's awareness that it's dust to dust. His grandfather died. My grandfather has died. I remember when he died. My father died. I remember when he died. I remember how I felt. It's seared into my mind. I remember when other people have died. I've seen some very awful things in my life. There's music. There's good food. There's loving my children. There's praying. There's being gentle, quiet. I don't want to be like this. I want to go back to living the life of well-being and contemplation that matters to me. But I am not going to give up my neighborhood to people that are either too stupid to know what's going on or too corrupt to change it. And it's one or the other. And it's every one of you, if you're listening to me. You're either too stupid to figure it out, which means there's hope, because none of you are really stupid. There's a kind of, I'm not going to look at the truth because it's too can't handle the truth. There's that. And there's people that are really sold out to this kind of BS that is about slavery, drugs, and piracy. And what these people think in my area, because they're quite wealthy, is it's not going to affect them here. They think they're far enough up the side of the mountain that as the waters come up the mountainside, it's going to drown the people in Minneapolis and St. Paul, in Plymouth. But it's not going to get to us because we got such a good life here. And the truth is, we're on the verge of nuclear war. What happens in the next 41 days between now and when President Trump, thank you God for getting him inaugurated, what could happen could change everyone's life. We're that on the bubble. And every Republican in Minnesota needs to come together to preserve the lives of the citizens. It's at that level. We need to speak out against what our government is doing. We need to speak out against what the rhinos are doing. We need to speak out against anything that exposes our children to the manipulations of people who care not about life. A lot of stuff I didn't get to today, I'm going to get to as soon as I can. Thank you for listening. I wish you a great Tuesday night. Remember, Target.com. It's the end. Most of you turned off. I forget all the time. We need your support. I'm asking for your support. I did a terrible job of that tonight. One of the things we're trying to do is remember it's Christmas time. I'm trying to remember, but the money matters not to me. And that's something we're going to have to work with because we need a minimum amount of financial support to grow this company. We're going to go out with something I think is great. It's a Hall & Oates song. It's 10 minutes long. It's fantastic music. The song is I Can't Go For That. And that's pretty much like what we're talking about. There's so much I can tolerate. There's so much I can deal with and accept. But there's a boundary, a limit. I can't go for that. And what I can't go for is nuclear war. I can't go for poverty. I can't go for unrestricted assaults on my humanity and my well-being. Can't do that. I can't go for that. Have a great Tuesday night. We'll be back as quick as we can. Thank you very much, everyone.
Have a good night, everybody.
Twice as nice. sing it out. Anything you want me to. You want me to. I can't go for that. No. You can do it. I can't go for that. No. I can't go for that. No. You can do it. I can't go for that. I can't go for that. Can't go for that. Can't go for that. Y'all having a good time? Y'all right? Let me hear it.